Hey everybody, Matt from Nerd9's Painting coming at you with a series of Lord of the Rings. We're going to be doing the dwarfs from the Games Workshop Battles in Middle-earth strategy game. I'm going to be doing the dwarfs first, then I'm going to be doing a couple other things. But hey, if this is your first time stopping by the page, why don't you hit that subscribe button? You know, doesn't hurt to try. We're going to be taking those ugly gray models and we're going to be turning them into these beautiful models. I'm going to show you how to do different paint schemes for each miniature and then try and kind of do certain things, follow around with what you want. And if you like certain things, just follow that scheme. If not, then don't worry about it. We're going to be going with Darren's folk and we're going to be just following that paint scheme. All right, let's go. Alright, first we're going to start off by taking the plastic out of the box. That always helps. While using your tin snips, pick out whatever you're going to be using in your army. If you're going to be doing the entire thing, obviously take them all out. I'm going to be doing the skirmish mode, which is only 6 models. So I'm just picking 2 archers, 2 axemen, 2 shieldmen. Once you've clipped them out, go ahead and clean it up a little bit if there's little pieces sticking out. I like to use the tin snips if there's extra pieces, and I also like to use a file like I'm doing here to start breaking everything down. I'm going to do some optional kind of road pieces for the bases, and this is going to actually help the models stick to the base as well. I'm going to take some green stuff. You can buy it off Amazon, or if you want to spend a lot of money, go to your Games Workshop and get a little bit for a lot of money. It's an absolute ripoff. But cut a little piece off and wet your fingers a little bit and start molding the 2 pieces together. After you've molded the 2 pieces together, go ahead and place it in any type of pattern on top of the base. Just make it flat. It doesn't need to be square or symmetrical. It doesn't need to be any type of shape, because what we're going to do in the next step is kind of cover it up with some of the Strickland mud, and you'll see what we're doing here in a second. But go ahead and put it on there, and you want to put it on over the slit that's in the middle, and we're going to put the model on top of that, and that's what's going to hold the model in basically. Go ahead and put your model on top and push it down to the slit. Now I have some pieces of cork in the back that you can see on my mat. I'm going to take some of those, I'm going to place them on top of random pieces of certain bases, and those are going to be rocks. You don't have to do them for all, you don't have to do them for any if you don't want to, but it just kind of adds a little bit of depth to the characters. Before putting down our Strickland mud, we're going to glue a couple rocks onto just a couple, maybe 2 or 3 models to give it that little bit of depth. We're going to put some of that Strickland mud around the rock and around our kind of a stone tile that we've laid, and the look we're kind of going for is like an old ruin. So maybe a ruin or a city that was there before and is now turned into old decaying death, and the roads have been overrun by dirt and moss and other forces of nature, and that's the kind of look we're going to go for. So we're just going to spread it around. There's no rhyme or reason to it, so don't worry about it. With this tutorial, I'm going to be giving you a bunch of different avenues you can take to paint your miniatures and how to set them up. So feel free to skip forward to base colors if you don't want to do all this. You can just do strictly Strickland mud or some other type of base, or just keep them black, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to give you some other ideas. For this one specifically, I'm going to take some more green stuff. I'm going to put it on top of the miniature's little insert base, and that's just going to go over the top just to kind of give it a different type of look. So you can see that the road is underneath him and he's trying to step on the road, just to kind of give it a little different look, just to try different things. You don't have to do any of these, just something to, you know, maybe put in your back pocket if you want to do it for a different model or for this model, or just skip it all together. Just like with the last miniature, I'm going to be taking just a paper clip or a safety pin or whatever you got available that's straight, and making my own grooves for the stone. Don't worry about the depth. Make your own random pattern. There doesn't need to be anything specific. I'm just going with your typical stone layout look. And just go through and make sure you're just kind of keeping them straight, but don't have to worry about the depth or anything. Again, I'm using the Strickland mud to fill in the gaps around the stone we just made. With the bases all complete, it's time to hit them with some black primer paint, or use spray paint, whatever you got. Chaos Black is what I typically use, but I used an airbrush on this. We're going to start our first base color as Night Quester Flesh. I'm going to be doing two different skin tones, with the base color being this one, and then I'm going to do a Bugmans Glow. You can skip this one. I just want to try different base tones while I've got some different models going on. So we're hitting the face and the hands for the bow and by his helmet. It's going to take about 2, maybe 3 layers as long as you're thinning your paint. I'm going to be using a wet palette to do all my paints, so just let it dry completely and then put another layer on. For this model, I'm doing the same thing, the Night Quester Flesh for the face and the hands, and 2 to 3 coats for this with black. For the other skin tone, we're going to be doing our regular Bugmans Glow. Probably everybody's pretty familiar with this. It's going to take the same amount, 2 to 3 layers of thinned paint to make a nice base coat. Hands and face. There's nothing else that we're hitting besides hands and face. So take your time and enjoy the paint. Same thing with this one, and as you can tell on this model, I didn't attach the shield to it. That's going to be put onto sticky tack on a separate top that I'm using as a spray paint top portion. The cap, that's what it's called. I don't know why I said that. So keep that off and just hit the hands and the face again, 2 to 3 layers. For all of our metal pieces, we're going to be using Leadbelcher as our base coat. So the metal for the axe, the top of the helmet, and we're going to be doing it for some armor pieces as well. Again, we're going to be hitting the archers' helmets. Also, don't forget the arrow tips for the archers. And we're going to be doing a part of the armor here pretty quick. Make sure you're getting both axes if you're doing this cool double axe throwing monster dwarf cool looking thing. We're going to be painting the studded armor. I guess it's not studded, it's actually going to be chain armor on this archer as metal. So we're just going to hit all of the raised portions on the armor of the archer. Just doing the backside now of the archer, and just taking our time and making sure we're not going over. If we mess up a little bit and get out some on the cloth portion, it's not a big deal. We're going to go over here in a little bit. For the shields, I've used an old lacquer spray cap, and I've used some sticky tack, and I have put the shields on top of that after I primed them in black. We're just going to be painting the outskirts of the shields, and if you get some in the middle, it's not a big deal. We're going to be using some green on that in the future, but just go ahead and hit the all around the sides of it while you have it out. And finally, don't forget the little metal portion that's going to go on where the shield's going to poke through. Just hit that with some lead belcher on the two miniatures. All right, we're going to be picking up some of these metal pieces for the armor, and we're going to be using Retributor Armor. We're going to focus mainly on the armor spots for a couple of the dwarfs, and that's basically going to be it for that. But we're going to hit those front and back armor portions, and then for the little pieces sticking out, we're going to use a little silver here coming up in a minute, but not right this second. We're going to be doing the same exact thing for the armor for this specific model as well. Again, we're going to try and do the outer portion of the helm in gold, so keep that inward portion silver. For the armor that looks like kind of like a chainmail, I guess you could say, diamond chainmail, we're going to be using a little Balthasar Gold. Kind of give it a little bit of different contrast to make the units look a little bit different. For the undercoat of the miniature, we're going to be using the same color for all of them. And this is kind of following the paint scheme we're doing for the Khorne's army. So we're going to be using a little Castellan Green to do on the sleeves of the undercoat and the undercoat itself. Make sure when you're painting, you're taking your time and you're not trying to force the paint in. Let it dry completely before you put on a second or possibly a third coat, depending on how much you thinned your paint. As you're watching these sections, you're seeing that I'm just going over the different models that I've chosen for my 6-man little skirmish army. So you can skip forward or just keep watching it if you want to follow the exact model. And don't forget to do the green portion of the shields. For the handles of the axes and the bow, we're going to be using our base coat of Dryad Bark. So just follow along with what I'm doing and be careful when you're kind of going over, but if we get some on some other base paint, just clean it up with the other base paint we have. Also, don't forget the arrows either with a little bit of Dryad Bark. For the undershirt, I guess you could say, that are sticking out from the green portions of the models, we're going to be using a little Eshin Grey. You can also use this on the boots to save yourself some time if you want, which I think I ended up doing, but just hit those sleeves. If you want to do a different color, you can, but this is kind of a mundane neutral tone that's going to kind of make the other portions of the model stick out. You'll see later in the video. And also the underpants, it's not really underpants, but the portion that kind of sticks out by the chainmail and the green cloak that the dwarves are wearing. Alright, now we're going to start painting some of the beards. I did different colors. You can pick one and whatever you want. If you want to do all the same beard, I like my army to be a little bit of elder dwarves and younger dwarves and cool looking dwarves, whatever you want to do. First one, we're going to be using a little Steel Legion drab to put our base color on for this dwarf's beard. For the dwarves that I want orange beards, we're going to be doing a base color of Jokaro Orange. And this is going to make it look kind of like what you would expect from an orange dwarf beard. It's going to look pretty cool. For the last type of beard we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing a little bit of Doombull Brown. This is going to be our reddish, brownish beard that we're going to be doing on these dwarves. Make sure you're hitting all of the hair, obviously, and then each dwarf has a mustache as well, so make sure we're hitting that on top of the upper lip. For the belts, we're going to be using a little XV88 as our base tone for that. For the belt buckle on all the dwarves and the arrow tips, we're going to be using a little Iron Warriors. You can use whatever silver you want. You can even go back to Lead Belcher if you want. I just want to kind of mix up the two tones just a little bit because there is a slight variance to it. And here we're just getting the arrow tips. For the scabbard, we're going to be using a little Rhinox Hide. If you wanted to use Dryad Bark for this too, you can. I just want to kind of make it a little bit of tone variance, so I used a little bit of Rhinox Hide for this. I'm going back to that Retributor Armor, and I'm going to be hitting the top portion of the sword hilt and the sword crossbar, I guess you could say. But that's what we're going to hit. For the arrow fletchings, we're going to use a little Khorne Red. I decided to add some Squig Orange to that red-brown beard. Just little bits and pieces. Pick out a couple strands and use some of that Squig Orange we had, and go ahead and just pick a couple pieces out and paint it. This is optional, but you'll see here in the next slide it looks pretty good. We're going to take it one step further. Again, this is completely optional, but we're going to use a little Tau Light Ochre to pick out some of the orange spots we just went over on the beard. This is going to give it a little lighter tone, kind of a yellowish orangish tone, I guess you could say, and it's going to make it real good when we put the wash on. So this is optional again, but we want to make them look as good as we can on the playmat when we're beating the hell out of some of our friends or wives or whatever. Don't beat the hell out of your wife, you know what I mean. Again, we're doing the same thing on this miniature. For the boots, we're going to be doing a little German gray. You could use Eshin Grey on this earlier in the earlier steps, but I decided to kind of switch it up just to make it a little bit tone variant. For all the leather bags and the other little pouches, we're going to be using a little Mournfang Brown. So just kind of be careful when you're going over the other things, since we painted most of the other model, but that's all we're using that for. Let's go back to our lighter brown beard. We're just going to put some streaks, kind of like what we're doing with the other beard, of some Balor Brown. Just picking out some nice, thick, raised streaks to go into. And just paint over them real quick. And then we're going to be washing them here in a minute. Here on this miniature, I'm doing the same thing, just picking out some nice strands of hair with some Balor Brown. For the orange beard, we're going to be picking out just a couple of little spots with a little Troll Slayer orange. Again, this is optional, but it'll make it look real nice when we're about to put the wash on, as this is the final base coat we are doing. All right, we are done with the base colors. We are moving on to the wash. The first wash we're going to be doing is obviously all of the skin. A little Reikland Fleshshade. So hit all of our skin portions, whether you use the Bugmans Glow or the Nightquester Flesh. Hit that over. For all of our metal bits, we're going to be obviously using Nulin Oil because lead belcher and Nulin Oil go perfect together, including the belt buckle and the arrow tips, the helmet, and the armor. If this is your first time stopping here and you're liking this video so far, or if you've been watching this series and still haven't subscribed, hey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. I make it for the people that subscribe and want to continue to watch these and continue to watch the new videos. So I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment below of what you want to see painted next or in the future, and I'll make it happen. So just keep hitting those spots up, and let's go. All right, we're going to be mixing a little intermediate tone for our gold armor. We're going to be mixing a little Agrax Earthshade and a little Seraphim Sephia. If you want a more of an ancient looking metal, go ahead and watch my ancient gold wash technique for the other video, and I'll link that below. We're going to be hitting all of our gold pieces around here. Every piece of little gold that we got, we're going to be hitting it. So helmet and the armor for our mix we just made. And make sure you do it for the copper looking gold armor we did on the other archer dwarves. We're going to be hitting up all that green portion of the miniature with the Athian Camoshade. We're also going to be doing the shields with this as well. Just be careful when you're doing the shields because you don't want to get it on the metal portion. And make sure we're hitting those shields. Just be careful. Alright, for the beard, the orange beard specifically, we're going to be using a little Fuegan Orange. Just be careful when you're doing it and try not to mix it into the skin. For the light brown beards and our regular brown pieces, we're going to be using Agrax Earthshade. Make sure we're also hitting the bow as well. Alright, now with the highlight phase, we're going to start with our Nightquester Flesh again, and we're just going to do a reapplication of this, thinned of course, to all of our Nightquester Flesh minis that we did. if you didn't do this one, you can skip ahead to the Bugmans Glow portion of it. After we have done our first highlight of Nightquester Flesh, we're going to go ahead and start with the eyes. And the first thing we're going to do is kind of do a thin line of black where the eyeballs are at, and then we're going to put white over it. So just follow what I'm doing, and thin line of black where the pupils or where it kind of sticks out on the miniature, which I know is very small. Now just take the thinnest brush you have. I'm using a 10-1 brush, and I'm just putting on some white for the eyes. And then once that is done, we're just going to put a little piece of black, little pupil of black on the white. Pretty easy. Again, with the same small brush, go ahead and use just a little dot of black to make your little pupil. Now with the first highlight of the Nightquester Flesh minis that we did, you're going to do a 50-50 mix of Nightquester Flesh and Cadian Fleshtone. Now when you start with this highlight, we're going to be starting to do the top of the nose, the cheekbones, the lips, the fingers for the hands, and we're going to be doing just a little bit less than we did from the reapplication of the Nightquester Flesh. So top of the nose, lips, cheekbones, and hands. Again, I'm using a very small brush. I'm using a size 5-0 brush just to get the smaller surface area of the brush onto the miniature. Now we're using pure Cadian Fleshtone, and we want to do the same thing we were just doing, but every time we're using a new color, we're going to be using smaller or doing smaller and smaller surface area. So same thing, top of the nose, the lip, bottom lip, and the cheekbones, along with hitting all of the fingers and ones that are holding on to the axe. For the last highlight of the Nightquester Flesh miniatures, we're going to be using Kislev Flesh, and we're basically just hitting the top of the nose, the cheekbones, and a little bit of the fingertips as I'm doing in this. So just as light as possible. For the Bugmans Glow miniatures, we're going to do a reapplication of Bugmans Glow. Same thing we were doing with the Nightquester Flesh, top of the nose, cheekbones, all of the hands, leaving the recesses obviously dark. So just hitting the top portion. Follow along what I'm doing on the video, and if you got to rewatch it, just go ahead and rewind real quick and watch what I do again with the paint. And I'm also using a 5-0 brush. Alright, we're going to do a 50-50 mix of Bugmans Glow and Cadian Fleshtone for your next highlight of the skin. We're doing the same thing as we did in the last highlighting for the Nightquester Flesh miniatures. Hitting most of the spots, the nose, the cheeks, lips, and fingers. For the next highlight, we're going to be using pure Cadian Fleshtone, same thing we used for the last one. Now we're going to be using pure Kislev Flesh, and again we're going on the bridge of the nose, cheekbones, and fingers, slightly less than what we did last time. Alright, now we're going to be highlighting the gold, and the first one we're going to highlight with is the Agrax Armor Gold, and we're just going to go over all the, obviously, gold spots. So we're going to hit every square, and we're going to be doing not the entire piece, just hitting about 80 to 75% of the square if we're going square to square. Make sure you also get the top of the helmet and any other gold pieces to include the bottom portion of the sword and the hilt, I guess you could say. Alright, for our final gold highlight, we're going to be using the Liberator Gold. So we're going to be hitting all of the armor and the gold portions on the helmet and the gold portions on the sword. For the little rivets sticking out on the gold armor, we're going to be using a little Runefang Steel. We're going to start highlighting all the metal pieces. So the first highlight we're going to be doing is Iron Breaker. We're just going to do one more after this, but we're going over all of our metal pieces to include the helm and the armor. Obviously, when we're doing the armor, we're not going in the crevice. And when we're doing the helm, we're not going all the way to the edge. We're going to leave some of that helm kind of black and just kind of go through the middle. Also make sure to hit the broadheads on your arrows. Also, don't forget to do your axe, and I'm just doing kind of the edge of it to make it kind of looks like a sharpened axe edge. Makes it look kind of cool. You can do whatever you want though. And of course, don't forget to do the shields. For the last highlight of the metal, we're going to be using Runefang Steel, and we're going to focus on the tops of the helm, the shield, and the edges of the swords or the axes. More than that, and then we're just going to be hitting the broadheads as well, and that's it. So just watch what I'm doing and follow along. For the green clothing, we're going to be doing a reapplication at Castellan Green We're going to be hitting the raised areas, keep the crevices and the recesses dark. Make sure we're getting underneath the armor and the little crack that goes up to the armor. It kind of splits the armor from the leg. And as always, don't forget the shield. All right, go ahead and take 50% Elysian Green and 50% Castellan Green and mix them together on your wet palette or in a well or whatever you got. Now we're going to take that color we just mixed together and we're going to basically do the same thing we did with the skin. We're going to be hitting raised areas, do not get the recesses or the cracks, and just go ahead and get the most portions that would hit the sun. So leave the stuff underneath the same color as what it was washed. Or if you put over the Castellan Green on it, just keep it that. Now we're taking pure Elysian Green and we're going over the most top parts that would catch the sun and the bottom portion of the tunic that's sticking out. All right, we're going to mix a little bit of Averland Sunset, so 1 brushful of Averland Sunset and 2 to 3 brushfuls of Lahmian Medium, and we're going to create some yellow reddish streaks into the orange of the beard that we've done so far for this dwarf. We're going to take some Balor Brown and we're going to highlight the brown beards that we've done for the dwarves. And we're just going to pick out some strands below the nose, a couple below the mouth, and just kind of pick up a couple strands. And you want to kind of keep this at a very thin consistency. If you want to, you can mix it with some Lahmian Medium and it will kind of blend in a little bit better into what we've already done. And for our bright orange one, we're going to be doing a little Fire Dragon Bright. Again, thin this down quite fairly, if not with some Lahmian Medium, to get that nice thin paint on there. For one of the last highlights on the red beards, we're going to be doing a 50-50 mix of Balor Brown and Averland Sunset, and again, just picking out streaks inside of the beard. To highlight the Balthasar Gold that we already did, we're going to use some Guinea-Hana's Gold. And again, we're just picking out the diamonds and keeping the recesses shaded in, and that's it. To highlight the belts, we're going to be doing a little Baneblade Brown. And for our leather pouches, we're going to be just going over it with a little Doombull Brown. Or you can go back over it with the original base coat we did. It's up to you. For all of our wood pieces, we're going to be doing half and half of Baneblade Brown and Dryad Bark. And we're going to be hitting the axe handle, the bows, the arrows, and anything else that needs to be the brownish off color. Going to do a reapplication of German Gray to the boots, and that's all we're going to do in that. And with painting the boots, we are done with the model, except for the base. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Alright, we're going to take some Mechanicus Standard Gray, and we are going to get a dry brush on this. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dry brush this model. As you can see, when we put stones in here, we're going to dry brush those on top. It's going to be a little bit thicker, but we want it to be, as we're going to do several layers of dry brushing on this. If you end up doing the rocky bases, go ahead and hit it with a dry brush of Steel Legion Drab. To go back to the rocks and the stone, we're going to be hitting with Longbeard Grey, which is a dry paint from Citadel. Then we're going to wash that down. You can do all of it with Agrax Earthshade, but we're going to add some extra little things in there. So go ahead and wash that down with Agrax Earthshade and then let it dry. Now go ahead and hit portion of it with Athian Camoshade. Be sporadic with it, just pick and choose what you want. While that's still wet, put a little bit of droplets of Drakenhof Nightshade in there to kind of break it up. And for the rocks, if you want to bring it down just a little bit again, you can by putting some Nulin Oil on it. After we dole down the rocks with the Nulin Oil, let's pick it right back up with a little bit of Longbeard Grey, just a nice little dry brush on it. Alright, go ahead and take some Dryad Green, and we're going to get a little piece of sponge, and we're going to be sponging this entire miniature basically on the base. Just lightly tap around, looking for different spots that you want to put it on the rocks. Just give it that mossy look. Now go ahead and start doing a little bit of Castellan Green. And now a little bit of that Moot Green. And finally, some of the Averland Sunset. Just dab it right on, just a little bit, just a tad bit to mix it up a little bit. And a very optional step is to dry brush a little bit of white onto the stones that you have made. And go ahead and fill in those cracks with some Steel Legion drab. And the last part of painting, we're going to put a black around the entire base of the miniature. Another optional step is we're going to add some very nice little touches of different tufts and grass. It doesn't have to be in any real order. Just pick a place that you want to put something if you want to, which is optional. And put a nice little tuft or a piece of flower or grass. I'm just going to go and show you each way you can do it if you choose to do it. And with our models all complete, they look pretty decent. Look pretty good in the still picture, and then as if they're rotating right here. Ooh, that's fancy. They look pretty decent for what we did. I know this video took a long time, and I apologize for that, but I want to kind of show you every single step I took to paint these 6 miniatures. So if you wanted to do your dwarves in this fashion, you could, basically. Well, if you followed this tutorial and you enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you would, if you aren't subscribed, subscribe and give me a thumbs up. If you want to see something in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Leave a comment in the sections below. And I just appreciate you guys stopping by, watching this video, and if hopefully it helped. If it helped, I like hearing about it, so leave me a comment. Things I can improve on, some constructive criticism, whatever. I couldn't do this without you guys, and I appreciate all my subscribers and people that actually follow this channel and continue to follow it. So without further ado, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Paint on.